we're getting a long way from World War II and the black and white values that the world was confronted with Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan and the Allies, and the wonderful thing that they did for us all. I mean, we're not speaking German in Europe, and we're not speaking Japanese in Europe. So I think there is a generation of allies. There's a generation of Brits. There's a generation of Americans. There's a generation of Australians. There's a generation of people from all of the Allied nations in World War II that really owe a very significant debt to these people. Now, we can forget about that and we can say, oh, it was a long time ago and who cares anymore. I suppose we could do that, but that would be brutally unfair. And that would be brutally ignorant on the part of all of us who gained from the sacrifices they made. And so I think it's important that we take every opportunity we can to keep that memory alive, to understand that freedom didn't come to us freely. We weren't born into it. It was fought for by a generation of heroes, and we owe it to them to build and maintain their memory.
I think that's the importance of it all, right? It's just make sure that this mission and this message goes on, and the younger generation understands, and they're educated enough to move that along to their kids' kids. You know what I mean? And because I'm a young kid in the Bronx. Yeah, I had a history class, but I wasn't like, hey, I'm gravitating to history. But if I could send that message to my kid, then he sent it to his kids. The importance of this and this war and what it meant to the world, it needs to be sent. It needs to be moved on from generation to generation.
It's important that the next generation and the next generations and the next generations are aware of what the previous generations did, because it's not that the history has finished, it's that the history is influencing us today, and it's that learning about the past helps us understand today, which helps us understand tomorrow, because it's all just one big circle of the same things going round and round and again, and the situations in Afghanistan and the Middle East they're not new, they've been for hundreds of years, and if we can just keep looking back, it'll help us look forward, I think.
In the States, I feel that there's a huge disconnect between what happened here in the Second World War. A lot of it has to do is because us as Americans, we weren't occupied, and the people here in Belgium and a lot of Europe were. So, you know, we don't know what that is. Other than Pearl Harbor, we just don't know what it is. I guess 9/11 would be something on our land to feel what that is. But still, it's not the same. And being here and listening to the natives tell us how grateful they are and how much they respect and honor these men really brings it to the forefront for me. And it makes me feel that what I contributed is all the worthwhile. Because we don't have that in the States. You know, that we don't treat our vets the way we should. I wish that the way this country sees our vets, and this town, Bastogne in particular, sees our vets, sees those men, I wish that the entire U.S. would view them in that same manner.
You know, I often come to things like this. So I've been to things before, and I've been next to vets and in Q&As, or I've just, you know, I've been to things where I've had to kind of almost remind people that I didn't serve, you know, and I felt sort of fraudulent at times, and but the flip side of that is coming to things like this, seeing the impact the show has had on people, and the younger generation. That, you know, there have been those cases of the younger generation coming up to me, and I'm thinking, well, you probably were not old enough to watch it the first time round, you know, but it's such a encouraging thing to happen, because what it has done, what the show and I can now appreciate and not feel so much of a fraud about, is that it has reignited the imagination for World War.
Unfortunately, evil exists. There are evil men, and there will unfortunately always be evil men. And if we do not teach the next generation to seek that evil out and to destroy it before it comes a World War III, before another person takes over Europe or another set of continents with evil intentions, those kids are not going to understand what they're looking at if they don't understand what they've seen in the past. So it's obviously very important to be able to spot evil as it comes in the future, but to honor the sacrifices and to see why you have today what you have because of those who gave that to you. There's rows and rows of crosses that represent men whose lives were given for the life that we have today. So if kids don't understand why those crosses sit in the middle of those fields all lined up perfectly, then they don't appreciate what they have, and that freedom can quickly be taken away.
By keeping these stories alive and putting a face to it, whether it's mine telling my father's story or someone else telling their father's story, we can maybe stop something like this from happening again without somebody stepping up and saying, no, this is wrong.
When we shot Band of Brothers, we built Woodadge inside an aircraft hangar in Hatfield in the UK. And I said, well, surely there had to be some compromise in that. When we got to Woodadge today, I found that there was no compromise. It was almost letter perfect, thanks to Anthony Pratt and Alan Tompkins and the guys who were heading the art department and the research department for Band of Brothers. It was almost perfect. And there's something about Woodadge that's almost, I guess in America we'd say there's a hoodoo there. There's a mojo there. There are ghosts there. And they live there. You can feel them. There's an emotional spirit that grabs you when you walk through those woods and you see the holes in which those men fought, and you look around and see where the Germans were, and where the Allies were, and where the main armor routes were. It's an extraordinary place, and it deserves to be maintained in its simplicity. It deserves to be there as a living monument to what those people did in the Woodadge.
Oh, I mean, the comparison from the set to being in these woods was incredibly eerie. Very, very close. The attention to detail was amazing. You walked in there and you're like, oh wow, this is exactly how it looked. Exactly how it felt. It was crazy to kind of feel that and be there with the actors and kind of go, hey guys, are you feeling what I'm feeling right now? And they go, yeah. I kind of got that little feeling. We were on a stage, and we were on a sound stage, and I would say the one thing that stood out on the stage was when they did do the explosions, it echoed. So that was, a big thing from the stages, and the snow was not real snow, obviously. I mean, but it was pretty close. It was pretty close.
It was extremely surreal, and it really gave me a perspective of what it was like for them, more so than the set. Mind you, the production design on Band of Brothers is amazing, and seeing the comparison from that to this, beautiful, but that is still a set. And being here and seeing these foxholes and seeing how close the enemy was really just changes everything for me. It was extremely moving.
It just was kind of freaky, for want of a better word. It was just so, you appreciated everything about that art department of that time, that they kind of captured that. And even the different shaped foxholes and just some of the stuff that I had to kind of run through, and I went around and had a walk today, and it was spot on. If there was a moment, let's say that I was running from foxhole to foxhole, and they just pumped the thing full of smoke and created the sort of low-level mist, running a trajectory where they would squib up the earth to make it, rain mud, blow up trees or whatever it was. By the time they actually called action, they got the cameras very low. It's kind of what you do when there's an action. You do handheld stuff, and you're all around and you're doing this, and they're keeping it low. But by the time I can only remember seeing a small like red light on a camera. That's all that was all that was there, that was sort of kind of artificial or felt artificial to the surroundings. As soon as they called action, this thing would just go, and I had to follow this trajectory to keep in frame, but ultimately everything else was just, as far as I could see, the real thing. And then your mind plays tricks on you, and you kind of feel like just for a moment, that you are running from shelling, and that was a very profound experience as well.
The biggest thing of being in Bastogne has got to be being in Bastogne with Shane, who played Papa. And there was a neat moment when we were down in Foy today, and Mooch told that story that Malarkey had told him, that he watched from the high ground, he watched Rowe on the attack of Foy just move from first platoon to second platoon to third platoon, just moving through the battle, helping the guys. And it brought tears to my eyes. I mean, you're looking. I'm sitting there looking at the grounds, the field where he did that, and it was a surreal moment because it was completely cloudy, very cold. And right after Mooch told that story, a hole in the clouds came through, and the sun shone. And Shane was standing next to me, and he said, it's a shot from heaven, And then right after that cloud, the wind blew, and that cloud. So it was a very touching moment. So to be here with Shane was probably the most important.
The fact that I'm here with the grandson of Doc Rowe, the character I played, has made it all the more significant. Honouring Renee Lemaire and Augusta Chiwi, the nurses who played a vital part and were also showcased, has resonated so much. And I thought it would be emotional. I didn't think it would be as emotional as it's been.
I'd seen Renee's grave a couple of years ago. I had not seen Augusta since she just died last year. And those are two special people. Healers and nurses and medics in battle are completely unique in the fact that they don't go on the offensive. They're completely defensive, completely the humanitarian side of war, if there is one. So to honor those nurses that we did with the plaque a couple of days ago, that the city honored them, and to visit their graves and pay our respects to them is just as important as to pay any respects to any of the troopers that fought here, any of the troops that fought here, really. Those people played an integral part in saving lives and providing comfort and healing in the midst of just complete chaos and terror and death.
When you actually walk up on a spot like that and the emotions hit you pretty hard, where you think, 70 years ago my dad was right here, and it was pretty chilly today, but nothing like that. And just bleeding on the bottom of this muddy hole on Christmas Day, and it's very, it got me a little emotional. It was a little emotional for me.
The reason I do what I do for a living is just a chance to tell people about what my predecessors were able to do to bring freedom back to Europe after World War II and during World War II, and to be able to get people to focus on the past. And therefore I have a methodology of just an attempt to make it relevant to their own lives, so that those ordeals then, they're similar ordeals we're going through now. I mean, D-Day, I think, is more relevant now than it's ever been. It's what can be achieved by lots of countries coming together for a common good, because we're all so divisive. This has been a year of division and bitterness and elections, and this is people working together, which in turn is what we're doing here tonight. In that these are people, actors, musicians, tour guides, businessmen, all coming together for the same reason.